Well, good morning, everybody. While you look at this 7-day total accumulated precip map as a percent of normal, I'm going to kind of explain to you where I'm going in this forecast video. We got a pair of lows that are going to go across the United States in the next 7 days. And we got to talk about the updated risk of some snow, which thankfully has been largely taken out of the forecast. But there's quite a bit of severe weather that could happen with this first wave, and the second wave is going to bring in quite a bit of colder air to the northern tier of the United States. Meanwhile, there's heat advisories down in Texas. After that, I want to talk to you about how the week 2 pattern looks much drier, given the upper level flow sinking a trough into the east and a ridge over the central U.S. and west. And we need to see what that might mean looking out there for the rest of May, getting into June. I want to talk to you about kind of this concept of watching the first principles of atmospheric motion. We're going to look at kind of the bigger picture of how the atmosphere breathes by going back to the tropics. And I'm going to give you some more information about where our global winds are right now by pulling up some of Victor Cassini's maps and also talking about just angular momentum on the whole and what we're concerned about going forward. So that is the plan. And you've been staring at this map that just shows you how dry things have been across the northern tier of the United States. While we watched a low that first came through here, ran over through the Red River Valley, and then spun up over the last several days for parts of the southeast before bringing flooding rains in yesterday into parts of Virginia, with wetter conditions into the northeast as well. And what that did was that left a huge chunk of the United States out of the flow. Most of that was in the northern tier of the U.S., including a big section of the Plains, Corn Belt, upper Midwest region right in through here. Now, we've been drier in Montana. There's pockets of Montana that have been exceptionally dry this spring. You can see the dryness still in the parts of the Columbia Basin, the Snake River Valley, parts of eastern Oregon as well. But just having a closer look at this, you do note that down here we're well over 10 times normal rainfall. And that's because, gosh, what was this? Late last week, there was just rain down here totaling in some places over an inch. And that's a tremendous amount of rain for our deserted regions down here in the southwest. But this dryness that's been across the northern tier of the United States does extend into parts of the southern Canadian prairie. And we need to show you what's been going on there. But I wanted to look just a little bit more closely at the heavier rains that have moved through in the last 3 days, getting into parts of Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, to this region right in through here. My good friend Dr. Dave Cole, was on a phone call with him yesterday. I could hear it raining outside of his place in Blacksburg, Virginia. And nearby, there was 3 to 4 inches of rainfall in this area. If you go a little bit farther to the south, we can now see the incredibly heavy rains that were on this side of Georgia, getting into South Carolina. Now, up until this point, it had been quite dry across this whole section of the southeast, including Florida. Florida's been diving into drought this spring. But these recent thunderstorms from this large cutoff low have gone a long way to kind of rectify that situation, although it came in the form of flooding. And I was just talking, again, with another friend of mine down here, Rocky, and where his house is, he had almost 7 inches, just 10 miles to the north of him, 15 inches. So there's a few places in here that are extremely wet. Now, on the back side of this, there's been just daily thunderstorm activity. And a lot of folks have noted, why is this coming out of the east to the west? And it's largely been because of the way this low goes, right? So it's moved here to here, and flow around our low pressure systems in the northern hemisphere is counterclockwise. That is due to the rotation of the Earth. And it's an apparent force called the Coriolis force that shows up, that takes the wind, which is created by a pressure gradient, and deflects it. And in this case, it deflects it to the right. So as the air attempts to fill into the middle of the low, that's what the atmosphere is trying to do. I mentioned first principles. The atmosphere is constantly shoving itself into a more comfortable position by equalizing temperature and pressure, and weather is the expression of that. So the temperature contrast leads to a pressure change. A pressure change leads to wind, and the air tries to just fill it in. But as it goes in, it gets turned to the right, meaning that it ends up going in that direction, all because we're on a rotating reference frame called Earth. Okay, sorry. Went back a little bit to my old professorial days in 100-level lectures. Anyway, these things spin. And the flow came around this side, and that's why parts of Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, parts of Missouri, we've continued to see day in and day out thunderstorm activity, and locally very, very heavy rains out of these systems. And I told you at the beginning of the week, you're going to hate the forecast. What I mean by that, you're going to be disappointed with the ability to pinpoint, precipitation. And it's all because of the way we're making this transition into more summer-like convective weather. Now, back to the bigger picture. This is what that upper level lows look like. And as it spun itself up yesterday, A couple things to take note of. A lot of deep convection. I mean, look at these storms blowing up and through these areas. And as they did so, they locally put down some heavy rain, a broader cloud shield farther to the north. And on the backside, very clear, very dry, and extremely hot weather, especially in the northern plains. So what's amazing about this is that here's the direction the low is curling up. But look up here. That's smoke. And it's going in this direction, indicating the switch, the immediate switch that happened where flow's coming around like this as higher pressure tried to build in while the low is exiting. I think it's a fascinating thing to look at how the wind patterns just mimic the heat distribution across, well, in this case, the lower 48. But those wildfires we've been monitoring now for a few days. I just want to show you, if you look at the latest soil moisture data, this is just the top 4 inches. That week of very dry conditions with a high heat meant high evapotranspiration rates. Some places those rates were almost approaching 2 inches of evapotranspiration a week. And that's how we rapidly dried this area back out and gave rise to the wildfire risk that we saw in parts of southern Canada, Manitoba, Ontario, and then here into parts of Minnesota. Meanwhile, we're completely saturated in the topsoil here. So just, again, it's a spring and likely a summer of large precipitation disparity. And is that common? Yeah, it's very common. We have that every year. But I feel as though 2025 is going to be on the higher end of the distribution on how we're seeing the atmosphere deliver its moisture. And spring is the setup months, okay? But let's just take a look at those wildfires again. Matt showed them yesterday. I want to show them today. I want to show them in my video today, but these are from yesterday afternoon. So here's Ontario, there's parts of Manitoba, and here's those fires. I guess this is day 3 of these fires in parts of Minnesota. Just incredible to watch the smoke plumes from these. Okay, winds. Winds are going to make these things worse, and I want to show you using the high-res NAM what's going on with our winds today. We've got very strong winds expected in parts of Texas and Oklahoma, also coming out of New Mexico. Still some stronger winds here. Early today, most of today, quite pleasant, in parts of the eastern Corn Belt, down here around Florida as well. But watch this in the northern plains. We're going to watch this next system curl up. And now here we go, Thursday into Friday. We're expecting strong winds. This is all models I use, stretching from parts of South Dakota into western Iowa, southern Minnesota, where gusts could easily get up over 50 to 60 miles an hour as we watch the backside of this low wrap up. And as it does so, there's going to be some very, very rapid changes in temperature in this area too. So be aware of the strong winds we're forecasting here. Okay, so just a shade after 6 a.m. this morning, just wanted to bring up a couple of things. We do have the high wind watch that's already been placed here. We still have the red flag warnings. There's some dense fog in places that would be these colors. We have the red flag warnings down in New Mexico, and this is it's a heat advisory. Thank you. It's the first one I've kind of seen this year. So heat advisory, that's in place down in parts of Texas. And that's because this is what the high temperatures look like today. Now, I apologize. I thought I fixed this, and I just noticed today I didn't. That it's not minus 44 on the Rio Grande. That is I must be hitting a pixel that's in Mexico where I don't have NDFD data, but I'm trying to create an anomaly. And so when there's no data, that's what it does. So just ignore that. Forgive me here. But I mean, down here in San Antonio, Austin, we're looking at temperatures well over 100 degrees. And also up here in the Red River Valley of the North. I mean, that's Grand Forks at 92. But you can go across the state of North Dakota today and see temperatures that swing, 35, 40 degrees. And that's the beginning of the colder air that's coming through. And this is the setup for what's going to be the severe weather risk that the parts of the plains and Midwest are going to experience. Now, we've talked about why we're not discussing this risk farther to the south, right? We know that the low that's exiting has prevented the quick return of moisture into this area, which means we're not going to watch this build all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico in one big severe weather outbreak. It also has to do with the orientation of the jet. There's actually some ridging down there. See it? So this is kind of the low-level jet punching the subtropical jet, I want to get these terms right, punching its way here into the Midwest. This actually began over Indonesia about a week ago. Matt and I were talking about this yesterday. And Andrew and I have been discussing as well, Andrew, Matt, all three of us, we sit here and talk about this all day. You should come visit sometime. But it's the orientation of this trough, plus where the instability will be, and the boundary, the front, that is making it a challenge to figure out How far into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois are we going to be watching for this severe weather risk to get into this area? And again, this is tomorrow. Today we've got it in the plains. I'll show you that in a few moments. But this is the very interesting configuration. Look at that turn in the flow. Incredible just motion in such a tight spot here. But I do want to show you down at the surface. Well, let's go close to the surface. We'll go down to 850. There's going to be a deep low. And on the back side of this, rapid temperature drop. On the leading edge of this, we're going to watch out for that severe weather. But the issue here is look where the flow is coming from on the backside. Your moisture source is there. So see, this was a situation where the system didn't get to tap into Gulf moisture early enough to produce a big system in the midsection of the country. So today our severe storm risk is going to be out in the plains, the Dakotas, parts of this kind of southwestern corner of Minnesota, western Iowa, getting into Nebraska. And I want storms here. I mean, we've got to get rain back into parts of Nebraska. Tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center has gone up to an enhanced risk for Wisconsin, parts of lower Michigan, northern Illinois, and Indiana. But you can see a broader area. And they're starting to find the shape of that, kind of where the nose of that jet is kind of pushing the best ingredients. And I'm going to tell you, these folks are the best in the business. I learned from them. So don't ever let my tone sound as though I know more about this. I rely heavily on their expertise, also on the expertise of Andrew and Matt to understand severe weather. I love forecasting severe weather. My passion is in subseasonal forecasting. I've got to pick something, and I'd rather pick the long-term stuff than the short. So that's why I rely on my friends and colleagues to be better at this than I am. But that's day 2. Tomorrow, Thursday, here's day 3. This would be Friday where the front lingers. We're going to watch down here across parts of the Ohio River Valley, mid and lower Mississippi River Valley for the severe weather risk. Okay. Right now we've got storms coming through parts of North Dakota. There's still some spotty storms down here around Atlanta, getting up on the kind of I-75 and through here. But what'll be interesting to watch is how this all evolves. So good model initialization, except here. Look, there's storms right now in Georgia that the model did not have. So good, not so good. Playing it forward, one low exits. By this afternoon and this evening, our models have really just tossed in extremely heavy rainfall on slow-moving thunderstorms. And the reason they're slow is because the overall upper-level wave is still yet to get out. So it's got multiple hours of forcing in that area, giving the air good chances to rise. But we could expect to see overnight tonight very strong winds, heavy rains coming into parts of Nebraska, mostly into central South Dakota, but heavier rains on the backside up here in North Dakota as well. So this low continues to mature as widely scattered showers push east. And then we're going to watch. This is now Thursday morning, getting later into the day on Thursday. So you see, it's all about timing. See where that front kind of moves through here? You got to get into the instability of the afternoon. So a lot of Iowa has the front clear through the morning hours. And by the afternoon and evening, it's over parts of, Wisconsin, northern Illinois. And this is going to be very tricky because synoptically, there's going to be the chance for these storms to rotate. And I'm very curious all along this region if we're going to get this to kind of build down and give us risk of strong to severe storms that have the potential for tornadic activity. Don't be surprised, too, with the main front. There's the cold front coming through Iowa that we could get another round of storms here. On the backside, more widespread precip. Next front comes into the Pacific Northwest. Now, you're going to notice something different between these next two systems. See the color shading difference? This one's following the heels of this one and has some access to some cold air. So more on that in a moment. But by the time we get into Friday morning, okay, the low is now wrapped itself up here. There's the front that's back into that area. So we're going to keep an eye on this region Friday night. Okay, not now, not when the map is valid, but Friday night. I do want to zoom in, if you don't mind, and show you the northern tier of the U.S. here in the central part of the country. This is this afternoon and this evening, according to the high-res NAM. So please have multiple opportunities to stay ahead of the weather, both with radar, weather.gov, NOAA radio, everything. Isolated storms east as well. Playing this through the overnight hours into Thursday morning. This is what we're going to be watching closely on Thursday afternoon and evening. Just the risk of single-celled thunderstorms here, which can rotate. And then we get all the way out there to Friday. And that's the backside. Okay, I've mentioned that the models have been all over the place with snow. Many of you saw some tweets I put out over the weekend. You want to see the new forecast? I told you that we don't trust these things. This is the new 10-day outlook for total snow from the GFS. Now remember, on Mother's Day, this model put into a region in through here 18 to 24 inches of snow, and now it's at 0. The European, which has been much more steady, this is the new 10-day outlook on snow. It's got it in the mountains, but that's really going to be the extent of it. Now, there will be enough cold air to get the possibility of some snow showers here, but we're not talking about major accumulating snows at this point. So that brings us just to the other kind of part of this discussion. While we just saw 90s and 100-degree temperatures, I mean, I showed you the temperature for Fargo and Grand Forks today. And, we're going to watch for the backside of the slow to come in and bring in a frost event. And it's going to hit parts of South Dakota, all of North Dakota, northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP, and Michigan as it comes through here on this system that's on the 18th, 19th, and 20th. So total precip, because of the way that system I just mentioned is going to stall out today here, we have the risk across this area of 3, 4, 5 inches of rain. I still am concerned that this area may look over predicted by these next two systems. I'll kind of show you what I mean by that one looking through the European model. But take note, all along the Gulf Coast, we're drier. I mean, Georgia, happy to be dry right now. What I want to know is this: how much of Nebraska does get this meaningful rain? And does the I-80 corridor, which runs through here, do you notice this is not wet? I know there's coloring there, but look at the shading. These are low values, and that is an area that is in drought that is going to continue to get worse going forward. And we're ringing the alarm bells on what's going on in parts of Nebraska right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at it by just finding the waves. So trough here, this is the one that's creating the issues I just mentioned. It's got the subtropical jet coming in the backside of it. That one goes through. Now here's the difference. When the snow forecast was much more real, this rebound in temperatures on this ridge wasn't there because this trough had lingered farther back to the west. I'm talking about this guy. It was over here earlier. And this one was deeper and more connected with cold air and closer, which, remember earlier this week I said antecedent cold air. This one left its cold front in place. Therefore, any moisture that the next wave tapped into was able to put down snow on the backside. They're a bit more separated, and the models are attempting to cut this low off, offering more time for a rebound in temperatures as we get to the end of the weekend back into the northern plains, and resulting in less chance for snow. No chance of snow unless you're in the mountains. But that wave comes out comes out of the mountains here Monday, Tuesday, and then watch this. All of our major global models have sunk into this idea for week 2. Trough, ridge, trough. Now what does that do? This is drier for this whole region of the country. And this is going to be another situation where we're questioning as we finish May and start June, do these long waves, which give us circumglobal ridges, stick around for a long time? And that is the drought issue, because anytime you have flow, and it is not July, that comes out of the north and west and through here, it is a hard recipe to create thunderstorms. We're missing ingredients. 1 is we don't have an open Gulf. 2, we have convergence in the flow. And 3, it's already been dry in this area. When I talk about ridge riding summer thunderstorms, you've got to be able to plant high pressure here and get the flow to come over the top, and there's got to be juice in this corridor. But look, I've seen this before. You put a trough here, that's convergent flow. This is a drier signal for this region. So just stuff that away in the back of your head as we go forward. So here's the European model solution on all this. Wednesday into Thursday, Friday into Saturday. So again, there's that Friday night severe weather risk here. We've seen this in the high-res NAM. That low curls into the northeast, and then the next big one comes in. So look, this is going back and forth over Saturday. See the deep wave coming into the west. Here it emerges on Monday. It's just, look at this, daisy chained together. I love that. So there's one low here, leaves a front. Second low comes out there. It just follows it. So this is now Monday. Getting into Tuesday, there it is. There's the big system coming out. And by Wednesday and Thursday, it rolls through the central U.S. So we put all that together, and what we end up getting out of this, we just look at total precipitation, is something like this. There, look at that. That's just through Friday morning. And then we watch this going farther. There's the storms we're talking about on Friday night. But look at what the European model's doing. There's going to be a region in through here where there are going to be spotty, large thunderstorm complexes, and they're going to hit just a few key areas, leaving a lot of the other part of that region drier. And then we wait to the next system. Well, okay, when's it come out? Sunday, Monday. Watch, it's already come through the northwest. There it is. And it's trying to fill in the hole. See that? From parts of Nebraska and Kansas to Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin. But I'm skeptical on its ability to do that. But in total, that's a lot of rain. Let's look at some probabilities here. This is the chance over the next 10 days of grabbing an inch. And if we step this even higher to 2 inches, new model run, of course, comes in. Got terrible timing with that. There you go. 240 hours is 10 days. That's a chance at 2 inches. Here's the chance at 4. So that is a 90% chance of 4 inches according to the European ensemble in part of the Dakotas. This region needs a break to finish planting and replant too. Gosh, that's a lot of rain. Who's dry? Total QPF under ½ inch. QPF is quantitative precipitation forecast. What I don't want to see is this expand or continue through here. And that's where I think the models might struggle. Drier along the Gulf Coast, yes. Drier southwest, yes. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. Now, I mentioned to you this week 2 issue. And again, we're already dry in the soil here, but we're going to make a major advancement on the moisture right into that area, right? So that's our current soil moisture. But when we look out there at week 2, the AI probably has it right. As the flow comes over the top, yeah, we have lows here, but this is convergent and drier, which means you can finish planting probably. But the risk here is going to be how long do these long wave patterns last? And I'll bring that up in just a few moments. All right, how about temperatures? We already looked at the frost risk. Here's max temperatures today. That's tomorrow. So look at this. 92 in Grand Forks to 78. That's tomorrow. And then 55. So a nice 40-degree swing in temperatures by Friday. So this is where our frost risk is coming in. And here's the second round of that cold air, Monday, Tuesday, across the northern tier of the U.S. Staying quite hot across the south. We do get a nice recovery in temperatures by early next week for California's Central Valley. But as we look out there and just kind of pay attention to these temperatures, watch the shift from west to east. Now, here it is in a nutshell. If you bring in cold west and we have warm east, in the middle is where all the fun is. And the flow goes like that. Ready? I'm just going to go over here and just drop this at week 2. Now you've got cold east, warm west. So guess what direction the winds go? And that's what's shutting it all down. So let's watch the whole thing in progression. Next 5 days. It's a 5-day sliding window. That's day 5 through 10. And here's day 10 through 15. And I want to know how long this lasts. Because it seems as though this longer wave pattern, where there's a trough and a ridge and a trough, okay, so seems to have been sniffed out by the European model for a while. Because it has this longer range forecast all the way out to June 21. And this is going to be a major concern if we do stay drier here, if we stay drier in Montana, if we stay drier in the western United States. And the whole premise of this forecast, which I showed you on Monday, is echoed in the GFS extended forecast. I think has a lot to do with what's going on here. Now, Matt and I talk about this every day. Andrew contributes a tremendous amount of knowledge to this stuff. I wish you could just sit and listen to us. We're a bunch of nerds talking about the weather. Remember how back in April, which is here, we were saying week on, week off? Well, this is called 200 hectopascal or 200 millibar velocity potential. Remember earlier I said first principles. This is over Indonesia. For those of you in the United States watching, we're here. This is in the tropics, though. Everywhere that you see these colors, these negative values, this is where air is rising. This is the birthplace of heat and momentum flux into the upper atmosphere. And it's almost always sitting right here. But what we watch is for these. And do you know what that is? These are bits and pieces of the momentum getting transferred out of the tropics that came on a cadence of week on, week off, week on, week off, week on, week off, week on. And we're here now. And this is what's interesting to me. The new forecast is stalling everything out. And there might be right in through here another week on, but it is not going to be to the caliber that these have been. These diagrams are called Hofmüller diagrams, and to be honest with you, I think that if we want to really tap into sub-seasonal weather forecasting skill, I'm going to follow in the footsteps of many of my predecessors who learned to read these extremely well. Now, this comes from a guy named Michael Ventris. He's an outstanding meteorologist. I actually don't know who he works for right now, but he's just a brilliant, brilliant young scientist. And a compliment of his, or former colleague of his at Albany, this is State University of New York at Albany, his name's Paul Roundy. And he gave us this, and I love using these. These are constructed analogs. Now, it's a 100-day low-pass filter on the position of the MJO. In other words, he's using the historical phase of the MJO and looking at his historical times when the MJO did what it's doing. And this is interesting. This would tell me in the reds that we're building in some ridging here, but the overall position of the jet stays north. And there's broader trough risk here, and this goes out to June 21. So what this means is a northward displaced jet is one of low momentum. And we're starting to see that low momentum move north. See it? Now, if this continues, here's the story. If I show you this all the way through August, and that's just still going on, this is the type of summer where we tend to put in long wave patterns where ridges just anchor in places. And it gets hotter and drier and hotter and drier, and drought begets drought, and it just gets worse and worse. Now, I don't know where that's going to be right now. We've made a case that it's somewhere in the Western Corn Belt, northern plains. I don't know. That's the thought. But is it Minnesota or is it Montana? Or is it even farther to the west? I mean, is it here? I don't know. None of us know. But it's a risk that we've got this year under this low momentum state. And that low momentum state is also summarized in some of the work of Victor Gassini. What I often do if I just need a quick snapshot is I come over this global wind forecast, a global wind oscillation, and I just find the zero line. And if we're hovering around down here, or even farther down here, that's low momentum state for the atmosphere. When it comes up here, we're talking about the rapidity of change in the system. But this is what we're keeping an eye on. And so the risk is still there. So let's keep talking about it. Last thing to show you here, I just want to look at some global maps just to point out it's kind of 3 of our biggest ag producing areas in the Northern Hemisphere, actually 4, that are cool. Northern Plains, Western Russia, Eastern Europe, India, and the North China Plain, Manchurian Plain. Interesting to find all 4 of those are cool right now. If we look at precip, very wet around the Black Sea. We have some wetter conditions on the Manchurian Plain. Very wet along the Mayu front, which stretches along the Yangtze, which remember back in April was very, very dry. And then you've seen us talk a lot about the U.S. Last thing to point out, NDVI values on the safrinha crop are record high, meaning that it is the best it's ever looked from space as they start to harvest it. So that's, I think, a place I'm going to stop, and Matt will pick this up again tomorrow, and we'll finish out on Friday. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Stay aware of that severe weather threat in the northern plains. We'll talk more about these temperatures and these long waves as we finish out this week. Appreciate it. Thanks.